Hello, my name's Julia Fountain, and I'm the coordinator of the Dementia Consultation Group within Sussex Partnership NHS Foundation Trust. So I was asked to talk about 10 years of our lived experience involvement in the Centre for Dementia Studies, and I will do that. But any of you that have worked with me know that it doesn't take long for me to start talking about my own experiences with dementia. Chris Maddox, one of our group members, commented recently that it's important for researchers to remember that the word me is in the middle of the word dementia. So with that in mind, and seeing a large part of the role of the Dementia Consultation Group to always bring dementia research back to the individual, while celebrating 10 years of the Centre for Dementia Studies and our lived experience work alongside it, I can't ignore the fact that it was also 10 years ago that my wonderful mum Eileen was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, and her being catapulted into the world of dementia and me being catapulted there alongside her. Mum was delighted when I first got involved in dementia research. She herself was a participant in the Time for Dementia programme and some other research studies. She's always been keenly aware of the importance of research in making a difference to the people living with dementia now, but also those who are yet to become diagnosed with dementia. And for those of you who don't know me and don't know about the work of the Dementia Consultation Group, I've been coordinating the group for about 4 or 5 years now. We're a group of people with experience of living with dementia and memory problems. Some of our group members have a diagnosis of dementia or memory problems themselves, and some, like me, have experience through caring for or supporting a partner or other loved one who has dementia. In short, we meet with researchers and advise them on both the design and the delivery of their research from our lived experience perspective. The earliest note I could find of a Dementia Consultation Group meeting was the 27th of March 2014, so pretty much exactly 10 years ago. We've had regular Dementia Consultation Group meetings since then, continually increasing in number from around 3 or so a year to roughly once a month now. And we've also held study-specific lived experience panels for many studies over the years, both big studies and small studies. We've presented at Centre for Dementia Studies conferences, and here are some of the group members from a presentation we did in 2020. We've produced a poster containing guidance to researchers with some of the issues we found ourselves saying more than once. I wanted to talk a little bit about what difference does it make involving the voice of lived experience in research. So firstly, I thought of practical things like considering participant burden. 15 questionnaires might well yield a lot of data for a researcher, but what about the participant faced with having to complete them all? We often ask questions of researchers about the comfort of participants, so the number and length of visits, breaks, time of day of visits, method of participating, and so on. We also often comment on taking away unnecessary complexity for participants, both in the studies themselves and in the participant materials. It's of course important for participants to be fully informed, but it's a fine balance to inform and yet not overwhelm people. And here I have to mention plain English. We so often see acronyms, academic and medical language that just isn't needed. The use of plain English in participant materials is important to all of us in the group, and it's one of the items in that guidance poster. But I do have to acknowledge in particular one member of our Dementia Consultation Group here, Ellen Jones, who is really keen on always promoting the use of plain English in research. And in addition to those practical considerations, I'm often struck by our emotional response to both proposed and ongoing studies. One wrong word or phrase on a participant information sheet can cause distress, anger, cause people to just not want to be involved. I'm often shocked at how strong my own reactions are. There's so much emotion tied up for both our group members who have dementia and those of us sitting alongside somebody we love. We've had involvement over the years in studies that span different stages of dementia, some looking at experiences around and following diagnoses, right through to studies that look at experiences in later stages of dementia. We've worked with large multi-centred studies, as well as smaller studies for early career researchers, PhD students. Much of our involvement in studies is carried out in the same way. Basically, it works. We like to meet with researchers as early as possible to give general feedback on their plans for a study. And this is often the same process, whether it's a small study with one researcher or a large multi-centre study. It's at this stage where we can help shape a study. Have you thought about, why do you have that exclusion criteria? How might that make participants feel? Why are you only talking to carers, perhaps, or not talking to carers? Could you gather the data in a different way? And as I've said before, once a study is funded, we often have study-specific lived experience advisory panels where we advise on those practical delivery aspects, commenting on the participant materials, the methods of recruitment of participants, right through to disseminating the results of a study. We always say how important it is that participants themselves, as well as the general public, are able to access results of a study alongside those academic papers. I'm always keen to expand ways we can increase lived experience involvement in research, and to always be mindful of whether we can do things in a different way. I have two examples of us doing things a little differently. One was a study called Indeed, which was part of the Time for Dementia programme. A very small study, was important in terms of lived experience, as we thought about a different way of consulting people living with dementia. This time, a group of people living with dementia who attended a social group in Eastbourne, run by Eddie Wood, another member of our Dementia Consultation Group. He has a diagnosis of Alzheimer's himself, and he runs a social club for people with memory issues and dementia. I joined in with the group, took a coffee, and we had a really light touch consultation, and by agreement paid the group as a whole rather than individuals, so they could have that money to go towards a group day out and other funds for the group as they exist. It worked really well, and I'm continuing to make contact with existing groups to try to include people who might not be able to or might not want to join a dementia consultation group themselves. Another study is a PhD student, Ezra Hassan's study around attitudes towards dementia, and looking at the attitudes of young people towards dementia. This was the first time we ran a mixed group, including young people alongside members of our dementia consultation group. It was really nice to have a multi-generational group, and something I'd really like to do more of. One issue that has come up quite a lot over the years of our work, the role of a carer. What is a carer, and what to call those of us who love and support somebody living with dementia? One study from quite some time ago now, the SIDEMQUAL study, had a lived experience advisory panel, and they preferred the term family carer, but making sure that it was intentionally inclusive of all different relationships, including extended family and close friends. So family carer or family and friend carer is one that we seem to find works quite well. But obviously, like all these things, it's an ongoing conversation. I think going with carers, one issue that I and other members of our group feel very strongly about is to not forget that caring for a loved one comes after our primary relationship. I found that I was referred to as mum's carer by others long before I used the term myself. Predominantly, mum is my mum and I am her daughter. We have people in our group with all different relationships, and it's important that those relationships are not forgotten under the label of carer. We also often remind researchers not to forget that not everybody living with dementia has a person who fits that role. Some people living with dementia live independently, perhaps do not want to have anybody in a caring role, or just simply don't have somebody in their lives who would fulfill that role. And looking back over the last 10 years of our involvement, I couldn't ignore the global pandemic. COVID obviously affected delivery of every study that we were involved in and threatened the very existence of our group. We'd always met in person, and obviously that had to stop. Like everyone else around the world, we regrouped. I learned how to Zoom and we carried on. Of course, that didn't work for everyone. And I acknowledge that some people either haven't got involved or have stopped or reduced their involvement with our group because this way of working doesn't suit them. It's an ongoing issue. And just as we had that learning curve of how to work with the pandemic and all of that entailed, we're now on another learning curve of how to work best while making sure we include as many people as possible, but not losing the advantages that we gained through the ability to have online meetings and other ways of working. And of course, it's not just me. I have to say our involvement is only useful if we're working with researchers who welcome our input and make changes because of it, and mean that we have meaningful and effective involvement in dementia research. I'm so pleased that we have a good working relationship with researchers at the Centre for Dementia Studies and wider, including the ARC, Kent, Surrey and Sussex, and the Dementia Research Unit in Crowborough. I'd like to mention the previous coordinators of the Dementia Consultation Group, particularly Jean Southey, who was the first coordinator of the group and did that until her retirement in 2018. And of course, I must mention the Dementia Consultation Group members, past and present. It really is a privilege and a pleasure to work with you all. I learn so much every time we meet. And as I often say, we're not a support group, but that shared understanding and some common experiences mean that our group is a really supportive one. So I think that's all from me. Thank you for listening and do get in touch if you have any questions.